trials that people endure, legal or illegal, tell us what they stand for. We learn more about the defendant. We learn about the powers that prosecute these trials, what they fear, why they resort to injustice. And today, we also learn about God, or perhaps I should say, we unearth new questions about God. Where is God in these torturous moments? How is God present? Today, there will be a series of 4 meditations, 2 on the trial of Jesus and 2 more contemporary. Each one will have a reading, a brief reflection, a symbolic action where one of these chairs, symbolic of a trial scene, will be thrown down with the words, "This is a mockery, a farce." There'll be a meditative song and a time of quiet reflection. A show trial.
They took Jesus to the high priest's house, where all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes had assembled. The chief priests and the whole council were looking for testimony against Jesus. Many gave false testimony. Some said, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another, not made with hands.' But even on this point, their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up and asked Jesus, 'Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?' Jesus was silent and did not answer. Again, the high priest asked him, 'Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?'
At this trial, this show trial, Jesus refused to get caught up in words. For all the whirlwind of his ministry, all his remarkable stories, there was at his core an inner silence, something inscrutable. A New Testament scholar has noted the most obvious characteristic of God is silence. There is a kind of truth which, when it is said, when the silence is broken, becomes untrue. Jesus alluded to a new realm, the kingdom of God, but he never defined it. A profound silence underpinned the central symbol of his ministry. People use so many words to describe Jesus and what he stood for. Words that make Jesus more comfortable, more manageable, readily accessible. But we lose him in the flow of words. The authorities used words to whip up fear, to condemn, to generate anxiety, to produce any testimony, true or false, that might convict him. One commentator wrote, "How easy It is for those in charge to exploit the desire to survive, to use fear and terror to achieve even more control. But Jesus was silent. He refused to play their game. This trial is a mockery, a farce. Dispatched.
As soon as it was morning, the chief priests consulted with the elders, scribes, and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further reply. Pilate was surprised. After flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
We know very little about Pontius Pilate, who ruled Judea for 10 years. On the right-hand side, you can see just one piece of archaeological evidence. It says Tiberium, and the P-O-N-T of Pontius is not there, but I-U-S, Pilatus. We know that Pontius Pilate was recalled to Rome in AD 36 to answer accusations of cruelty against a group of unarmed Samaritans. That a Roman was called to Rome to account for cruelty in the provinces gives a very different sense of the man than portrayed in the Gospels. The Gospels try to exonerate Pilate. There may be just the tiniest smidgen of truth in the Gospel protestations of his innocence, in that Pilate likely condemned Jesus to death without much thought. One more troublemaker who needed to be made an example of and dispatched. If Pilate had written memoirs, I doubt that he would recall Jesus. That's how the powers work. They give little thought to grave matters that profoundly impact others. They dismiss the hopes of those who protest as an irritant. In destroying the lives of others, they also diminish their own souls. What would happen if they stopped and listened and paid attention to Jesus? Please come forward and place your reflections on the table when you're ready. hero or traitor? Witold Pilecki. In the dungeons of a Soviet prison in 1947, when he was about to be placed on trial for his life and would not renounce his convictions, he wrote, "Even if I were to lose my life, I would rather that happen than live with a wound in my heart." Witold Pilecki was a Polish cavalry officer. In 1939, when the Germans invaded Poland, he fought against them openly. After they occupied Poland, he had to go underground. A member of the Home Army, he volunteered, and I underline volunteered, to be infiltrated into Auschwitz, the Nazi death camp, to organise underground resistance. He was one of very, very few who chose to enter that place of death. The networks he set up inside supported inmates with news of the outside world. Extra food and rationing provided intelligence, and notably reported to the outside world the scale and terror of what was going on at Auschwitz. Pilecki chose to register in a place of death to bring life. He was married and he had 2 children. He escaped Auschwitz and soon after fought in the 1944 Warsaw Uprising, organised by the Home Army. A brave but ill-fated revolt against the Nazis, which was brutally put down. He managed to escape Warsaw, but was caught by the advancing Russians. Because he was part of the Home Army, which was headquartered in London, because he was opposed to Stalinist rule in Poland, in 1948 he was put on trial, a show trial, and condemned to death. His body was dumped in a mass grave and never recovered. And until the Berlin Wall came down 40 years later, it was forbidden even to mention his name. He risked so much for the life and well-being of others. He survived Auschwitz and the Warsaw Uprising, but the powers dispatched him, giving him the name traitor.
This trial is a mockery. What a joke.
Not even a show trial. The photo in front of you appears to be a somewhat pleasant scene, albeit messy. But this appearance is misleading. Closer inspection reveals bullet holes, and later excavations unearthed a mass grave, innocent victims of the Spanish Civil War. It is estimated that 170,000 civilians, I underline civilians, not including soldiers, were murdered. Their crime? They supported the wrong side. from this remarkable book that I'm reading at the moment called Amnesia Road. We read this: in mottled light, barely disturbed amid the trees, scattered rugs of the homeless, flattened tin cans, broken bottles, and charred remains of a fire, I see a sign: Perdón de España. The remains of walls and trenches where 2,000 people were executed. This is a place of mass graves, sadness, and abandon. There is only one small inscription done by hand in a felt-tip pen. In Memoriam 1940, executed during the peace that followed the war. There is no other recognition or identification of this place. The victims were found, then dead, clean shots to the head. There wasn't even the pretense of a trial. A year later, I revisit the site. All signs of the homeless are gone. The place has been cleaned up since the visit of a recent high-profile left-wing politician. Some graves have been excavated. There are small headstones for those recovered. A good man, vilely executed by fascism. His life was taken from him because he bothered others. Some poetry near the entrance resonates. Though the autumn of history should cover your tombs with the dust of forgetting, we will never give up even the oldest of our dreams. They didn't even receive a trial, not even a show trial. Discerning a way forward. Those who stand for justice and a new vision of life sometimes pay dearly for their convictions. Today we remember Jesus and his sense of the kingdom of God just around the corner. What hope it inspired, and how he suffered for it. We also remember Witold Pilecki, victims of the Spanish Civil War, and so many others who have dared to dream. Today we grieve their suffering and their loss. And we face some questions. Where is God in all of this? What insights does this Good Friday elicit for you? There is a Jewish practice that when expressing grief, you tear some clothing. In a moment, I invite you to come forward. There are some pieces of clothing there. They do have a rip in them, so find the rip and then tear it. As you do so, experience the grief and the loss. And you also have black ribbons You can tear them, and I invite you to place them on the table and the clothes after you've torn them. How do we move forward through this suffering and loss?